Welcome to day, what is it, 4 or 5, depending on when you got here. I'm glad you all got up and made it out to our session this morning. My name is Matt Dreyer. I'm joined with...
I'm Oren Root.
We are part of the core product management team for VMware Cloud on AWS. You're looking at two of the people that actually sort of built this thing. So we wanted to take you through a full run of what this looks like. We're going to get just a tiny bit technical, but mostly this is a show and tell. We really want to show you the full end-to-end experience of what we've created here. We should have some time at the end, so at the end we'll be down at the edge of the stage. We've also got some handy laptop stickers or whatever you want to stick them on. And so we'll get going here. I'll step away for a few minutes, and Oren, why don't you get us started?
Cool, thanks. Okay, we're going to talk mostly about stuff that's IA, some forward-looking things, so we have this disclaimer slide. This is VMware Cloud on AWS 101. As Matt said, we're going to show you a lot of the how, talk to you a little bit about the what and why, but really this focuses on the how. We're going to go over give you a product overview, really high level. Then we're going to go and do the setting up of your first SDDC. How does it work? How do you put on your first workload on the cloud? Then we'll move over to talk about hybrid operations. That single pane of glass that we've been talking about, and then we'll talk about the interesting use cases we have leveraging the larger AWS services ecosystem and the VMware Cloud on AWS APIs. Okay, so last year we've announced this partnership between the two companies, the leading virtualization #1 private cloud provider and the world's most popular public cloud provider. Really, the idea is to bring in the best of both, so customers don't have to choose. You get the elasticity of public cloud, the flexibility, the economics. You get the compatibility with your workloads, broad set of services from AWS, and support for all your existing and new applications. So this is really a truly compelling offering. Now, if you think about what we're solving for and what we're going to talk about in this session, you're getting the full rich set of SDDC technologies. So everything that you're used to today from VMware is going to be delivered as a service from VMware on top of AWS. Consistency of operations, meaning that you can use the same tools that you're using today on premises. Nothing changes for you. The same set of APIs are available, your scripts, everything is going to work. No need to learn new skills. And then the portability, which is basically take your applications and move them as is, no replatforming of applications. So you have the freedom of moving and taking advantage of the full use cases of the hybrid ecosystem. You get direct access to the services that I mentioned before, so all the AWS Advanced Services, which allows you to do very unique integrations, leveraging the AWS services alongside with your VMs and your workloads running in VMware Cloud on AWS. And lastly, this is still vSphere, so we support all existing and new workloads, VMs, containers. So let's start off with an overview. So what is this? We're basically taking the flagship products from VMware, the full SDDC, vSphere, vSAN, and NSX, and we put them directly on top of AWS global infrastructure. This is a bare metal offering. This is ESX directly on top of bare metal, running inside of Amazon. To top it off, we put vCenter on top of this, and we hand you the keys. So same vCenter, only with the HTML5 client, so it's faster. But it's really the same vCenter customers are used to from on-premises. Now, because this is just vSphere, right, it's compatible with on-premises. So now, to bring in to start creating that hybrid environment, customers can create a connection, a link, initially an IPsec, an L3 IPsec VPN from on-prem to the cloud. And on top of this, we integrate with hybrid link mode. So you have a single pane of glass, giving you the full management capabilities of your on-premises as well as your cloud resources from a single vCenter. Because, again, this is just vSphere, all the APIs are compatible. All the tools, all the existing tools, whether they're VMware or third parties, they just work. The VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC looks like just another endpoint to all these tools. So all your scripts, everything just runs, all your processes can work on top of VMware Cloud on AWS. It's just another data center. Now we're sitting on the AWS global infrastructure, so we can take advantage of the broad set of services and do really interesting integrations. So what we've done here is we've set a unique interconnection between the VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC, which sits on a VPC inside of AWS in an account that we create and own and operate on your behalf, on the customer's behalf. We create that interconnection between this account and the customer's AWS account. This interconnection provides low latency, high bandwidth access to the AWS account, the customer's AWS account, taking advantage of all the regional AWS services as well as the private managed AWS services without incurring any cross-AZ charges. As I mentioned again, this is an offering directly on top of bare metal, no noisy neighbors. You get a dedicated host. The compute looks, basically you get 36 pCPUs, 512 gigabits of RAM, and again, as a dedicated host. Storage, it's full flash. You get 14 terabytes of NVMe backed devices. Comes out to about 10 terabytes usable after caching, and that's per host. And all the vSphere features, they're there. This is a 6.5 plus version of vSphere that includes HA, vMotion, DRS, and in the future additional features like elastic DRS, which provides the elasticity, kind of like a auto scaling for vSphere using hosts. For networking, we got fast networking. It's all NSX based, so you don't need to learn. Customers don't need to learn how to operate the NSX, the networking from AWS. The overlays is NSX, fairly simple to operate, very similar to what we do on-prem. And we have this unique ENI, this elastic network interface endpoint sitting on the customer's data center, on the customer's AWS VPC that creates a connection that I talked about before. And this really is the first step when you create an SDDC, is you create that connection between the SDDC that sits on VMware Cloud on AWS and the customer AWS account. We initially rolled out the offering in Oregon, in US West too, and we're going to quickly roll out US East Virginia, follow up by EMEA, and then we're going to eventually be available in every region that AWS has availability in. So this is a global offering. If you think about this, it addresses a bunch of use cases. Geo capacity, if you think about that, pretty much any region in the world where you have AWS presence. Now, VMware Cloud on AWS is a service. It's run, operated, maintained by VMware. VMware is a sole provider of this. You buy the service, customers buy the service directly from VMware. VMware is a single point of contact in case of any issues, kind of like the single throat to choke. The idea is you don't have to run around. AWS manages the infrastructure, VMware manages the software stack on top of it, and customers just manage their VMs. In case of any issues, VMware will take care of this. Provisioning, so VMware talks to AWS's APIs directly and provisions an account on the customer's behalf, an AWS account on the customer's behalf that VMware manages. VMware is the payer for that. And using those APIs, the EC2 APIs, we provision the bare metal instance. On top of this, we put our software stack, and then this is all automated. We hand over the keys to vCenter to the customer. From an operations perspective, again, VMware manages everything directly. VMware monitors the environment. Customers have access and visibility to monitoring the environment. Customers can see if issues arise, but customers don't have to fix them. VMware fixes them automatically on behalf of the customer. So you have the full visibility, but in case of, let's say, component failure or even a whole host failure, VMware will add an additional host to the cluster, migrate the workloads using DRS if needed, and evacuate the faulty host. And if needed, take it out of your cluster. You paid for a number of hosts, you're getting those number of hosts, and we'll make sure you get them. So you can still see you can see all the log in vCenter, you can still see what VMware is doing to remediate the problem, but it will not affect your workloads. We'll basically add that capacity that's needed. From a maintenance point of view, we take on that burden. So upgrades, patches, this is all done by VMware. So customers don't have to do this anymore. So that's additional TCO savings. If you look at it from a consumption model, what can we do? How can we consume this? We're starting off with an hourly on-demand model. This is the unit of consumption is a host. The host includes all the storage, the software stack, the hardware, support on top of this. Everything is bundled together to the price of a host per hour. This is how we're starting. Pretty quickly, we're going to keep rolling out additional capabilities. So 1 and a 3-year reserve model, where you pay upfront and get discounts up to 50% discounts for a 3-year reserve model. Add-on services that we're going to start providing on top of VMware Cloud and AWS. And from a payment standpoint right now, it's SPP and HPP credits. We're going to start adding additional ways of payment, credit cards, and later POs. And we want to make sure that customers can take advantage of their existing investment in VMware on premises. So we offer this hybrid loyalty program that basically takes your licenses, takes customers' licenses from on-premises and provides discounts when purchasing this service. Now, customers don't have to apply for this. We do this automatically in our back office. It scans customers' licenses and provides that discount automatically. We get discounts. We give discounts for vSphere, vSAN, and NSX licenses. And these licenses these discounts can rack up to 25% discount on a host. And customers don't have to give up their on-premise licenses. They can still keep using them. It's just another discount that they get. Okay, so we did the high-level theory. Let's dive into action. So what we want to do now is review the creation of an SDDC. So we're going to go through the process of creating an SDDC, going through everything we talked about before. We're going to set up this connection, and we're going to pick the size, and we're going to go and eventually see VMware provisions it. So this is our VMware Cloud console, VMware Cloud and AWS console. When I click this Create button, we go and we need to pick now, we need to start off with that interconnection, the connectivity to AWS. So we're going to go and log into our AWS account. We click this button, which is going to take us to AWS CloudFormation to build this template. Just takes all the manual operations out of this, so we do this. This is the AWS console, this is CloudFormation. The stack name is already pre-filled. All the customers have to do here is acknowledge that CloudFormation can create IAM resources, and click Next, click Create. CloudFormation starts running into action, and we can switch over back to the VMware Cloud on AWS console, which will update the moment the connection is established. Then we go to the next step. And now we have these two accounts connected with the customer's AWS account. The next step is to name our SDDC, pick the size. So we're starting off with 4 hosts in our initial offering, but customers can scale up host by host up to 16. So we'll pick 4 here. We have 1 region right now, US West. We'll click Next. Now we get to pick from our VPCs in our AWS account which VPC and which subnet am I going to connect to, which affects which AZ, which availability zone the SDDC is going to be deployed in. We provide a CIDR range for management so that we don't have collisions and overlaps with our on-premises management CIDR range. And we click deploy. VMware Cloud and AWS does all the stuff that we talked about before, calls the APIs from AWS, provisions the hardware, puts the software stack on top of this, and in the end, we get ourselves an SDDC. All of this, everything that we've done here could be done as well by using our using our REST APIs. So now, Matt's going to talk to us about the networking configuration.
All right, thank you, Warren. Okay, so let's review where we've been so far. We've got our counseling together, and we've got our first SDDC provisioned. Now we want to go and dive in and start using it. So what we'll focus on now is taking a look at the networking topology and start bringing in some virtual machines and providing that single pane of glass experience. So let's start with the networking configuration, because that's really the first part of this journey. One of the things that we really spent a lot of time and energy on is to make sure that we deploy an environment that is immediately usable by our customers. One of the things that we have found in a lot of different cloud offerings is that it's very much do a ton of configuration and design just to figure out how to get it built. With this offering, we've leveraged our designs from VVD, the VMware Validated Designs, and we've deployed a very prescriptive topology that you see here. This is a graphical representation, but it's actually pretty intuitive, right? You can see we've got a management gateway. This is actually an NSX Edge that we've deployed that protects our vCenter server and our NSX manager. And we've got another gateway that we've deployed that we call the Compute Gateway. Again, just another NSX Edge that we use to protect our workload VMs. On the right side of the diagram, you can see our connectivity both to on-prem as well as to that VPC where we can run other workloads. And on the left side, we can see the connectivity out to the internet. So if we want to do something like publish a public-facing website, we can do that here. So the configuration has been simplified. We have configuration for network, for firewall, NAT, and VPN connections, and we've made it very, very simple to consume. So let's dive in a little bit. The three main points of connectivity that we have are listed on the screen as you see here. The first one is availability over the public internet. Right? This thing lives in the cloud, and so inherently we provide a bit of internet connectivity. We can control access into and out of the environment in a very granular fashion. We can control this down with firewall rules all the way down to the port and protocol level. We also provide NAT, so we can do network address translation to do an additional level of hiding of those core IP addresses. For connectivity over distance, we use IPsec VPN. Again, standards-based protocol that's been around for a long, long time. We've done interoperability testing with this with about a half dozen different vendors, and I assure you we can make a VPN to pretty much anybody. This allows us to provide connectivity back to on-prem. It allows you to provide connectivity maybe into a remote region in Amazon, or maybe even just into another SDDC that you've provisioned. So again, you've got a lot of capability here and a lot of flexibility. The final one, and this is some of the magic sauce in this whole offering, is our VMware Cloud ENI. This is the fast path that allows us to do connectivity into the VPC, that link that Oren showed you when he was on stage. And it really allows us to have a fast path for accessing services like S3, EC2, and RDS. And many more will be coming online soon. And so with these, we have a tremendous amount of flexibility for creating new kinds of hybrid applications and hybrid architectures that get really, really cool. So I'm going to walk you through a bit of this. We're going to start a video here where we're going to show how we've created a virtual machine in VMware Cloud on AWS. We'll boot the virtual machine up and take a look at its private IP address. We'll then use the VMware Cloud and AWS Cloud Console to allocate a public IP address for that machine, create a firewall rule, and finally a NAT rule. And then at the end, what you'll see is we'll have actually booted and published a web server on the public internet. So let's let the video roll here. We'll start by looking at our inventory. Again, this is the vCenter deployed in VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. We found our IP address of our virtual machine, so you see that it is on a private protected subnet. We're now going to bounce out to that networking configuration of the SDDC, and we'll start by allocating a public IP address. So if we scroll to the bottom of this page, you'll see we've made it very easy to allocate it a public IP. You simply give it a handy name, hit request, and in about 5 or 10 seconds, it will come back and give you an IP address out of one of the Amazon pools. So now that we've got our IP address, we need to create a firewall rule. So we'll scroll back up the page here a little bit, and we'll create a firewall rule that allows connectivity into this IP. So again, pretty straightforward. We give it a name. We're making an allow rule here, and we're going to flip the port from 443 down to port 80. And we'll then have allowed the connections to come into the compute gateway. We save that rule, and now our final step is to create a NAT. So we need to move that traffic from the public-facing IP address down into our environment on the private IP. And so we'll create a very simple little NAT rule that just simply forwards traffic off the public IP down to the private. Hit save, and we'll be rocking and rolling. So again, very, very straightforward here. Not a lot of rocket science, and really built for ease of use. And again, this is all underpinned by NSX. So if we take that IP address, paste it into our browser window, you can see that we're actually running a little WordPress server out here, right? Pretty darn simple. And that really is the goal of this whole setup. We want to make it dead simple to do easy things, yet give you enough tools to do very, very complicated things. And so I hope you see some value in that. So now let's start talking about hybrid, and this really is the key. If you look at the proposition of just booting some VMs, there are plenty of clouds out there that allow you to do that. The real differentiation in this offering is that we're able to do hybrid operations very, very easily. So I'll walk you through some of the proposition here and some of the requirements, and then we'll actually show you how this actually works. So when we talk about doing hybrid operations, the first thing that we need to do, let's get the mouse working, there we go, is provide connectivity. And so here again, similar to the diagram that you saw, this is the PowerPoint version. We can provide connectivity into either side of that topology that we've deployed. You can have VPNs into either side, neither side, or any combination there above. What this allows us to do is to start enabling things like hybrid linked mode. So if we run traffic across the VPN to the management gateway, we can now do things like get a common inventory view across our vCenters on-prem and in the cloud. If we take advantage of a VPN tunnel on the compute gateway, we can then provide connectivity between workloads deployed on-prem and in our SDDC. Again, new kinds of hybrid applications where you might have the front end running in VMware Cloud on AWS and the back end running in your own data center. So again, a ton of flexibility here. And again, it's a standards-based IPsec VPN that has been proven to work pretty darn well. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the things that you can do in hybrid mode. Once you get the environment linked up, we really start turning on the gas. You can see here we've got in the screenshot to the right of this slide our single pane of glass operating environment, where we're seeing the inventory from our on-prem as well as our inventory from VMware Cloud on AWS. And in fact, you have the ability to move workloads back and forth from that view. So no more crazy like going to different consoles and doing all kinds of weird wiring. You literally are able to view all of your inventory in one spot and take action on that inventory as if it was in one place. The requirements for this, we do need connectivity. So most customers will bring up an IPsec VPN tunnel to facilitate this. We do have a minimum vSphere requirement on-prem in order to create the link. So for those of you that are still sitting on old versions of vCenter, please start upgrading. To take advantage of this, we need a minimum release of 6.0, but we vastly prefer 6.5. And so make sure you put that on your work list for this next year to get up to that version that can establish the link. Once we've got this, we can pair up against the SSO domain and make the magic happen. So we'll go ahead and take a look at how this works. In this video, we're going to go through and show the linking operation. So what we'll do is we will go and open up our vCenter in the VMware Cloud and AWS SDDC. We'll configure the link to go authenticate with our SSO domain on-prem. We'll bring in a set of groups that we want to map to our cloud administrator group. And finally, we'll instruct the vCenter servers to connect to each other. And you'll see that this is, again, pretty straightforward. So we're going to go ahead and log in. And we're going to navigate down into the administration of the vCenter server. And we'll find a new thing in here called linked domains. So here's that three-step process. The first part is to point authentication against our on-prem Active Directory. This is a pretty standard setup that we use for SSO. So after you copy back and forth and get all of your OUs configured correctly here, the next step will be to point it at the AD or LDAP server and continue on with the wizard. This is proven to be very flexible. We've done configurations against both Open LDAP as well as against Active Directory. Works pretty well and does what it needs to do. So now that we're going to link up against this other domain, we now need to map in our users and groups against our cloud administrator group up in the cloud. So we'll simply select the group on-prem called CPBU TMM, and we're mapping those guys in as administrators on our platform. The final step here is to link the vCenters together. So we'll just provide some credentials here and do the link. Our next step is actually to log out and log back in as a user that's a user on this broader domain. So we'll log out here and we'll log in now as a locally authenticated user from on-prem. As soon as I do this, you're going to start seeing the full view of the inventory from both sides. So we'll come back here and just check the configuration really quickly. You can see that the environment is now linked. We can see both sets of inventory off in the side nav, and you'll also see that we have a new authentication domain configured in SSO. So we'll go take a quick peek at that one, and then we'll start playing with the inventory. So you'll see now that we have 3 different authentication domains available to us. We have vmc.local, CPBU lab, and another one called local OS. Again, pretty straightforward configuration, and now that that is done, we've got the full set of inventory at our disposal. All right, pretty slick. Okay. So now that we're linked up, the next obvious thing is move a VM, right? Because that's why we're doing all this. It wouldn't be fun if we had to reformat VMs and transpose them into other formats. And so now we're going to use the linked environment to take a virtual machine from on-prem, move it up to the cloud, and then we'll move it right back down. So again, you're going to see very familiar operations. If you're a VI admin, you've probably done this a million times in your career, and you can see that it's really, really no different. So first, we're going to check our firewall rules and make sure that we've got the right ports open to allow the migration to happen. And so we've got a couple of ports open here that will allow us to communicate with those ESXIs. We'll again log in and find a virtual machine that we want to migrate. So we'll go pick one out here. Again, this is not a live vMotion yet. For a live vMotion, we need a layer 2 connection. For a cold migration, we just need a powered off VM. So we're going to go find a virtual machine in here, power it down. After it's powered down, we'll use the very familiar migration wizard to start moving that over. And again, this looks just like every other vMotion you've ever done, right? You change compute and storage. You pick the target. The target this time is going to be on the vCenter server on the other end of the pipe. We tell it which data store to go on. We tell it which network to connect the VNIC to. Do a quick compatibility check. And here's actually the network that we're going to connect to, and run the migration. So again, big virtual machines will take longer. Small virtual machines will take less long. It's all dependent on your bandwidth. But you can see now we're just simply migrating that machine up into our SDDC. So this will take anywhere from a few minutes to maybe a few hours, depending on how big your workload is. And now you can see that we've actually moved this virtual machine up into our SDDC. It wouldn't be fun if it was Hotel California, so now we're going to just turn right back around and move it on-prem. It was kind of a pointless trip, but we did it anyway. And so now we'll just reverse the process, taking that same virtual machine, map it all the way back down on-prem, and we'll close off by booting. So again, you can start seeing the power of this. You do not need to set up crazy jump boxes and secure copy servers and all that sort of stuff. Using the normal tools and the normal inventory view that you already know, you can very easily manage and operate in a hybrid cloud environment. Pretty slick. And there we go. We'll boot it back up, and bingo. Round trip VM. It's like going to Vegas and back and not actually getting into a casino, right? Okay. So the next step here is to get a little bit more fancy. One of the things that we have been very, very focused on in building this offering is to make sure that everything is API-based and API-driven, all the way from the top level in the VMware Cloud on AWS console. That is all RESTful JSON APIs. And what you'll find down in vCenter Server is a new set of APIs that are under the internal term VAPI, but they're also RESTful, modern, and very, very interesting. So Oren has been up nights and weekends not sleeping, and he's actually built something pretty cool on top of these APIs.
Okay, great, awesome. So if you remember back in the beginning, we went through the whole round trip of, hey, let's set up an SDDC, let's connect it to on-prem, and then we mentioned the additional services that we can integrate with from AWS. So now we're back to this. So we've been hearing a bunch of use cases from customers, very interesting, on how to leverage that, call it different type of hybrid ecosystem where you have AWS services with VMware workloads. And so there's a bunch of use cases we've heard of, for example, take your Oracle rack, run it in VMware Cloud on AWS because it has multicast requirements and we support it, and put your web tier, for example, on AWS or cloud fronted. And then again, you have that interconnection, so you're not paying traffic and it's all connected nicely. Then other customers are using, looking to get out of, paying specific database provider and moving, the database to RDS, for example. So you can think of all these integrations. Now, what we've done here is something slightly different. So we went and used AWS IoT with a Lambda function. And what we did is we use IoT, call a Lambda function. That Lambda function goes and calls VMware Cloud on AWS REST APIs. And those REST APIs are going to go and add capacity to our cluster. Okay? So to do this, I'd like to introduce the VMware Cloud on AWS dash button. So you familiar with those? Yes. So we actually have this button. And what this button does really is very easily configurable. It goes to IoT, it goes to Lambda, and when I click it once, when I press it once, it's going to go and tell the Lambda function to add one host to my cluster. When I click it twice, it's going to add 2 hosts to my cluster. When I click it 3 times, it's not going to do anything because there's no 3 clicks. But you can long press it, and when I long press this, it will actually remove a host. Okay? So let's kind of see how this runs. So this is my single click that basically goes, does the round trip, calls our APIs, and once it does this, we'll go back to my environment. You can see that a host has been provisioned. It's being added to the cluster. vCenter now reconfigures and extends to stretch over the additional cluster, additional storage, or additional node to extend storage. NSX will add the new host to extend the VM kernel network and the logical networks. And then in the end, you got yourself a new capacity, a new usable host that's added to your cluster. So pretty slick, right? It's like a click of a button. Now, This is obviously a video that we've accelerated a little bit, but not too much. I've recorded it about 2 weeks ago or something, and this takes about 10 minutes, okay? On premises, it takes, what, 6 to 12 weeks from the moment you pick up the phone and call Dell to when you have it racked and stacked, configured software, and people can start using it. This is 10 minutes, okay? And for $19.95, you also have access to unlimited capacity. And you can give this to all your developers and put this on their desk and stuff. So, okay, we've done this. Okay, let's do the other side. Okay, let's save costs. We don't need the size anymore. We're going to remove capacity. So I'm going to do a long press. The long press calls IoT, Lambda, same thing, different API or same API with a different parameter that tells it to remove one host for us. Okay. Now this is more tricky, right? So when this happens, I also get a notification on my watch. But DRS basically recommends which host to remove. So it chooses the most optimal host to remove. And then it puts it in maintenance mode, migrates the workloads off of it, eventually migrates the workload off of it, and eventually takes the host, gives it back to AWS. You stop paying for it, and your cluster is now downsized. Okay, so this is pretty simple. You can think about, this is a nice gimmick, but we've already had this weekend, we showed it to a bunch of customers, they're like, oh my God, this is exactly what we need. And you start thinking about all these use cases that you can do with all these integrations. One example we've heard is, hey, let's trigger, let's trigger, a failover or something like that, right? So for dev test. So you can think of many use cases that this could be used, but this is one example. And the idea is, we've just shown elastic vSphere capacity on AWS global infrastructure, really scale up, scale down. And if you think about what this does, it allows you to run hotter because you can provision the additional host really at a moment's notice. So that's the demo. Get this button, $19.95. Okay, we still have a bunch of cool sessions that if you're interested in VMware Cloud on AWS, you should attend. Fill out your surveys, really helpful. And we will take additional questions outside. Yeah?
You want to join us at the front of the stage? We've got stickers, and we'll take more questions offline. Thank you again for coming to VMworld. And,
thanks so much.